so again, good afternoon, everybody. I am losing track of the day and time because I have been peopling for the last week and a half. So I am exhausted, literally. As Matt said, I'm Purvis. This is Dr. Tonya, Crombie, and we're happy to bring this presentation to you today and hopefully help give you some tips and tricks and best practices, whether you're introverted, extroverted, or somewhere in between, on helping you realize your potential, as Matt so eloquently said during the invocation, to help you unlock that potential and maximize your opportunities. To give you a little bit about how this is going to work, this is an interactive presentation, so I'd all like you to grab that handy-dandy smartphone that you have. You know how to use QR codes, I'm sure. Open the camera, point it at the little code right there, or you can go to menti.com and enter in the access code. We're going to do some polling throughout this so that we can interact. So I'll give everyone a second on that to make sure they have it pulled up, and you're going to want to keep that browser pulled up because as we pull up different questions, it's going to refresh and ask you new questions as we go through it. So like everybody's had an opportunity. We got some likes on there. Perfect. All right, so the first question we have for you guys today is, how are you feeling today? Do one word, a couple words.
Am I the only one having phone issues?
I have to turn the Wi-Fi off.
Wi-Fi, all right, so let's go.
Appreciate it.
Happy. Nice and big. Very good. Tired. Amen. Went there. That lightning decided to start up at 4 o'clock in the morning. My 3-year-old decided that it was time to wake up at that point. So I get that.
I do this in my classes, and every single class I teach, no matter what the time, I get tired and hungry. So you guys are just like them. I got tired and hungry on here.
Beautiful. All right. So we got a wide range of emotions there, but it's largely positive, right? And so now you can kind of see how this is going to work as we get to additional questions. We're going to ask you to go and fill in your answers, fill in your responses for us. So the first question, how do you feel about bingo? Be honest.
To be honest, that's the beauty of this tool is we don't know who said what. Nervous.
I know who said when.
Are you really?
I like mango. Yeah, still hungry. That's a good one. Yeah, confused. Good, uncomfortable. Serious, engaging. So we're kind of all over the spectrum, and we kind of expected that, right? So what's your first thought, the first word that comes to your mind then when we talk about networking? They were ready. And for future, that's the first time I've seen that one in all the presentations we've given with this. That's a good one.
I don't know that I've seen oh no either. That's true.
Immediately,
That's very honest.
the TikTok sound just emerged in my head. On
Me too. Nerve-wracking, putting yourself out there.
See some people saying party. Okay. Got it. So we're all over the place on there too. Well, look, if you're anything like me, networking is probably a little bit terrifying to you, and it probably exhausts you. You know, to tell you a little bit about what I do as a good social interaction for me, it's an intimate setting. It's people with similar interests. It's talking and having a meaningful conversation. I'm not good around large groups, despite me being up here. I'm not just in a group of people that I'm completely unfamiliar with, right? I don't have to make awkward small talk. If I'm in a small, more intimate setting, you can get down to the details with people. and if it's too loud to think, have you ever gone to an event where you just cannot even hear yourself think? Or you're parked right next to the speaker, like I was Sunday night at a fundraiser, where like I couldn't even hear the person next to me? That can be really, really difficult. Well, people exhaust me. Social interaction exhausts me, and that's okay. I learned how to network, and that's why I'm here today, to try and help you all, if these are some similarities that you might see in yourself.
And I'm a little different than Shane, but somewhat similar. I have to psych myself up to network. But sometimes even when I'm like, oh gosh, no, I do not want to go, I find myself actually having a decent time. So, I love connecting with people, but I like connecting with people on a more, genuine, individual level. I don't love huge crowds and superficial small talk. My favorite, if I could do it, is just to hang out with people I already know, in all honesty. And then my thing I don't love is when other people just wanna hang out with people they know and I'm standing around and don't have anyone to talk about. So I understand it from both sides, but just like Shane, anytime I have to go out and do these sorts of things, I'm gonna need some time to decompress afterwards. I will be peopled out almost. I need time to recover from the peopling. But everything I do, that Matt mentioned in his intro, is pretty people intensive. So everything that I do does require, and my family does know, you know, Mom's gonna need a little time by herself and doesn't want to talk to any of you right now.
So when we first started putting this presentation together, I don't know, 3-4 years ago, I think, we conducted some anonymous polls online, and as we put it together, we really were targeting introverts, but we got questions from people of all different demographics, right? But we found that the most hated aspect of networking was making small talk at 64%, right? It's a pretty big margin. And it makes sense, and I think that what you look at is we've identified in ourselves, and we kind of did that self-discovery. That's one of the most cringy parts of networking, in our personal opinions. If you're an introvert, you're probably silently nodding your head. You're probably not actually nodding your head because you don't want to be seen right now. But that is probably what you're feeling. But there are benefits. Some key benefits to networking that I cannot stress enough. So I want to talk to you about the big three that I've personally identified over the years. First off, it's visibility. I'm a business banker. I'm a production-oriented person. I have to make sales, right? I have to make goals, and I have to try and find people who identify and fit with our company and with what we try to do. I can't do that by just sitting behind my desk and hoping someone walks in. How many of you actually go into your respective banks nowadays? And bankers cannot answer that. And I know Stephanie does, because I've known her for years. But seriously, most people don't. I have to go out and find people, right? Increased visibility. Being visible, people know who you are, they know who you represent, and it helps you with that credibility. Opportunity for growth. You can learn so much from people of different backgrounds, different demographics. There's so much that people can teach you, but if you aren't in front of those people, you can't learn anything from them necessarily, unless they try to get you to pay for an online course. It's probably garbage anyway. You really can't learn anything. And then unexpected opportunities. I have not received a job offer in my professional career outside of meeting people, we hit it off, and they come and look for me to fill an opportunity. I have not had a single instance of having to go and just put in 50 applications. And I put that as a credit to building relationships, being visible, and getting to know people who then sought me out versus me having to seek them out. So you never know what those opportunities could look like. It could be a sale for you and your company, it could be a professional opportunity. I met my wife via networking, so it could even be that, right? So there's a variety of different things, but these are the big three.
All right, so obviously you guys saw the words that we all listed when we said, how do we feel about networking? Different people feel different ways, and whether you would identify as an introvert or an extrovert kind of has a big impact on how you think about networking. Typically, extroverts enjoy networking more than introverts, right? Typically, I think that's true. So would you place yourself? I would say that introversion and extroversion is a continuum. Some people are extremely introverted, extremely extroverted, more in the middle, but let's just get a sense of the room. Where would you place yourself? So it looks like in this group, we are actually skewing a little bit towards the extroverted side, which may not be surprising because you had to come here. You had to make the decision. So it's a little hard for the introverts to get it together and show up, but we do have some people who also identify as somewhat introverted, and the biggest category is somewhere in the middle. And I would say a lot of us, I would put myself as the somewhere in the middle, tending towards the introverted side. So we talked about extroverts tend to like it more than introverts, but let's spend a little time talking about introverts, because I do think sometimes we have some misperceptions about introverts. When you think of the word introvert, what's the first word? What do you think of? What words come to your mind when I say introvert? Shy, quiet, reserved, subdued, a homebody maybe, yeah, a loner. Somebody intelligence comes to mind, a good listener, someone want somebody to walk up, yeah. Solo. I didn't say this on the first slide, but the way Mentimeter works is the more times someone puts in a word, the bigger it is. So you can see that shy, quiet, and reserved are kind of our leading words that are coming up as people are putting in the, so it has a short people meter. I think that means their amount of time, their meter gets run out on a short amount of time, and that's a great description, actually. Here's some other words that sometimes, and so you got some of these. We do this, we've done this a few times with students, and students are much more negative on their introverted words, and this is students who are introverted, but they're saying things like, hates people, loser, they say mean things about themselves. But here's some of the things that are good about the introverts. The introverts in the world tend to be deep thinkers, good listeners, they're thoughtful. They may be, they're rarely bored, they're creative. They're rarely bored because they don't mind being alone. They can find something to do. I love being alone. It's like, that is the biggest gift, because I can find something to do. I love to read a book. I'd love to go watch something that nobody else wants to watch. Whatever. So here are the characteristics that introverts share. Most would rather stay home than go out to one social event after another. They enjoy quiet, solitary activities like reading, writing, gaming, gardening, drawing, crocheting, creating things, all of those. We'll usually choose the company of a few close friends over a wild party. Introverts tend to do their best work alone. That's one of the things that differentiates you if you're kind of like, I don't know. If you find sometimes that the noise and the chatter and the teamwork, you just need to go off into your office and close the door. That's an introverted tendency. And many of us will avoid small talk or unnecessary social interactions if we can. But here are the myths. Here are the things people get wrong about introverts. Some people think that introverts don't like people. That is absolutely not true. I actually like people a lot. We're socially awkward. Also, I don't think introverts have a market on social awkwardness. I think social awkwardness is very well distributed across the population. Sometimes people think that introverts are arrogant, stuck up, and rude because they aren't talkers. It seems like maybe they're rude and stuck up because they're not going out and initiating conversations. Another misperception is that introverts wish they were more extroverted. Most do not. Most are pretty happy being who they are. We also don't feel like we need to change. Again, we're happy with who we are. Sometimes we feel like other things, the world might need to change. But here's the truth. It is that short people meter that someone said. Introverts feel completely wiped out from too much people time. You may feel fatigued, you may feel unable to concentrate anymore. That's that mental fatigue, like I just can't, and sometimes, this is me, I don't know if anybody else resonates with this, but you'll do a whole day of stuff, like I'll teach all day, and then at 6 o'clock my phone rings with a work call, and you're just like, oh, no. Because I just know I don't have the mental energy anymore. I'm done with all of that serious thinking. Even grouchy. A lot of people can make you feel grouchy. Again, my family knows. Too much social interaction makes us feel as if our brain has used up all its mental energy and we just don't have any left. And that's exactly what has happened. That is the truth. Our brains expend more mental energy to do the peopling than someone who would call themselves an extrovert. Of course, there's also a misperception that extroverts don't run out of energy. They absolutely do too. The difference between an introvert and an extrovert is this analogy right here. An extrovert, think of them as a marathon runner. They will, just like a marathon runner, they will run out of energy eventually. They just can go longer. An introvert is a sprinter. We go in, we do what we can do, and then we gotta rest. And I want you to think about that as you're networking, both about yourself and other people. So introverts, know about yourself. I can only do this for so long. I need breaks, I need things. Extroverts realize that not everybody works like you. Because sometimes the extroverts in the room are running that marathon. And they're going up to a sprinter who just is finishing up a sprint, and they're gonna say, hey, let's run some more. And that poor introvert is like, I just did a sprint. I went as fast and as hard as I could possibly go. I got nothing left here. And the extrovert's like, I'm only 1 mile into my marathon. I got 25 more miles to go. I'm great. And that is why sometimes we disconnect at networking events or with other people, is it seems like you've got boundless energy, extroverts, and the introverts are kind of like, whew, I'm done with this sprint. So an introvert needs an energy boost before you do lots of peopling. You need to come up with things that help you kind of pep up, whatever that is. I'm not a big, caffeine is not my thing. I put that on there, but one of the things that I do before I have to teach a class is it's a mental psych up. So I've been teaching for a long time. I haven't been teaching at Southeastern for a long time, but in general, out in life, I've taught about a lot of the same topics for over 20 years. And so what I have to say to myself some days when I'm like, I gotta go talk about leadership styles, I have to say, it's time to go sing Don't Stop Believing. Because Journey has sung Don't Stop Believing 8 million times, right? And they may not be psyched to do it every time, but they know that if they show up as their best, that they're gonna give something to the audience, because the audience wants to hear Don't Stop Believing, right? And sometimes that's how an introvert has to think about it. You gotta be like, I just gotta go out there and sing Don't Stop Believing one more time, and it's okay, because if I do it, the audience is gonna get something out of it. That's one of my but you come up with the pep talk or the energy boost, even if it's like, go do something quiet before. Go have a minute and just kind of get yourself calm before you have to step out and do that. You might also need breaks while you are peopling. Introverts, learn these little tricks now. It took me a long time to realize that nobody is gonna notice if I go to the bathroom in the middle of a networking event. I can step out at any time and just go be away and come right back. And just kind of, oh, I just needed a breath. I was a lot, it's loud in there, and step out and come back. If you're an extrovert, on the other hand, you need to be good at reading the energy level of the people you're talking to and adjust your energy accordingly. So just like I said, you're the marathon runner, you're feeling great. Just notice if the people around you might be kind of waning a little bit. And just take your energy down a tiny bit. Because as an extrovert, you love meeting people. Your goal is to meet lots of new people, but you do not want the people you meet to remember you as the person who made them feel drained or overwhelmed or like, whew, right? I literally just had, I met someone and it's a friend of my sister-in-law's. And just ran into, she introduced herself to me, and it was one of those like, whoo, that was a lot. And after I texted my sister-in-law and just said, I just met your friend so-and-so, it was a lot. That was what I said in my text. And she responded even better. She is also super introverted. And her response was, I'm dying laughing because a lot is an understatement. So just, you don't want people texting that about you. Just remember, experts. You're one of them, you're a lot. But just be aware of not draining people. And if you're an introvert, introverts often, like I said, the students were really hard on themselves when we asked them. So don't think badly of yourself and think, I'm not good at this, I can't do this. You actually have some amazing talents and abilities that make you really good at it. People love talking to an introvert because we don't mind listening. We don't mind letting them talk. We ask questions and just let them talk, and they love that. So you are bringing something important to the table every time you show up, even though it might be a little harder for you to show up. Just remember, the goal of your networking is to build connections. Just like Shane said, there's 3 amazing benefits you're going to get every time you do it. And both extroverts and introverts have skills that make them great at building connections and make them great networkers, on both sides. So we're going to share some networking strategies for people who like networking and even for those who don't. So I'm going to kick it back to Shane.
So again, going back to that poll that we did a couple of years ago now, we were trying to find out what are your peers' thoughts, right, on networking, and what do they think about strategies and things that they like to try to deploy to make it easier, more bearable to go to a function with hundreds of people and make the most of it. You can see a handful of them here. The most liked aspect of networking is truly that building interesting and beneficial relationships at 57%. But the strategies that they used were really, really intriguing. So the most commonly used one, 36%, was setting goals. How many of you are goal-oriented people? Right? You like unlocking achievements, you like setting milestones, something along that line. And it doesn't matter in what, you just like having that aim. Goal-oriented people, these are the things that they were using. Bring a wingman. How many of you came here with someone today? A handful, not too many though, right? So the second most is wingman, but then we had tied for third, pep talk, that psych up conversation that Dr. Crombie was talking about a few minutes ago. Going to a peer group. If you're not sure what a peer group is, you're in one right now. It's the North Shore Young Professionals group, right? Going to a group with people like-minded or similar interests to help give you some more familiarity with the people in the room. And then going somewhere with good food and drink. We live in Southeast Louisiana. This is pretty much a staple at just about every event we go to, right? There's a title company down in Metairie who every year they put on a big crawfish boil that's catered by Drago's, and they bring in charbroiled oysters and all that sort of stuff. Every year that I get an invite, no matter how much I don't wanna go network or people, I go to that because of the food. Free Drago's, like I'm doing it, so, right, we do that. So, out of those 5, I'd like to know, what is your favorite strategy to deploy? So pull up your phone, and let's use Mentimeter to see what we've got. Polls are always some of my favorites, like being at the Superdome and watching like the little cup races and like the little boat races, right? See what's gonna happen, you never know who's gonna win. I should have thought of this. Food and drink should not be a surprise to me with the Young Professionals group, right? I mean, anytime we can get some free or affordable food, we're always in for that. Hey, Wingman. Set goals, peer group. Okay. So we want to talk about the advantages to each one of these strategies. So for Wingman, you know, it does establish some familiarity. It's nice to have somebody who's well connected or who knows people you might not for that introduction, and vice versa. If you can help to introduce someone who's beneficial to a friend or a peer, so that it helps them and helps you, you know, builds your credibility, that can be a really, really strong advantage to going to a networking group.
And the pep talk, as I mentioned, that is one that I use all the time. I always say my self-talk game is amazing. I have conversations with myself all the time, and one of them is like, Tonya, girl, you can do this. You can go. It's gonna be fine. No one's gonna be mean to you. Just that kind of little thing to remind myself, because I have those like, nobody's gonna notice if I don't go. Maybe I just won't go. I always had, and so I have to have the counter voice to say, no, you need to go. This is the right thing to do. Come on, you can do it. Get it together. You always are glad after you do this. So have that talk. So just a little pep talk can get you there when you're sort of floundering, and a lot of the introverts, when I know you flounder when it comes to, do I have to go?
You know, setting goals. So that was one of the top ones by peer groups. It gives you purpose. It helps give you that focus to say, hey, I need to go and have 5 really good conversations with people. I need to come away with 5 mutually beneficial connections, something along those lines. It gives you something to shoot for, right? I like a challenge. Like I said, I'm a producer, so I'm a goal-oriented person. My boss is always trying to set that bar a little bit higher every year, and I'm always trying to eclipse that to my own detriment. It's very similar when it comes to this, right? Setting that goal gives you that true focus.
Yeah, and peer group, as Shane said, you guys are in a peer group. People who are doing similar things to you, experiencing kind of in a similar place. I'm a member of SHRM, Society for Human Resource Management, because I am a human resource professional. And it's easy to walk into that group because you always have something in common, no matter who you sit next to. You kind of know the lingo. You can ask them what they're working on. You can, when they say, oh, we're doing open enrollment, you're like, oh, I know exactly what that means, and, you know, yeah, I did that and it stunk too. I totally know what you're talking about. So it does make that awkwardness less. You guys all are at a similar place that y'all can kind of talk about the challenges you're having being where you are in your career. So it makes that initial conversation easier.
You know, food and drink, don't really have to elaborate it on it anymore. We already just talked about that. But it is a great meeting spot and conversion spot where everyone is going to the same spot for the food. I don't know if anyone was at Chef's Foray in Covington last Sunday. I was at Chef's Evening as well in Hammond this previous Sunday. Everyone's going to the food. That's the reason we're there. So it's a really easy bridge to talk to somebody. How was that boudin stuffed egg roll? They were phenomenal. I know it's phenomenal. Like, it's an easy thing to be able to start up a conversation about.
Is that the ring?
Oh yeah.
Maybe. I like after food with this
You wear the suit and shrimp boots, that's all.
So the wingman. A wingman is also one of my favorite strategies, but it can be a weakness when it comes to networking, because you just stay with that one person you know and talk to them because that's so easy. right? You go with your one friend, you sit with your one friend, you talk to your one friend. That's not networking. So, my recommendation to overcome that weakness is, especially if you're going, like, sometimes I will schedule with a friend that I don't work with or I don't see very often. I'm like, hey, let's both go to this thing. We both need to go. It'll be good for both of us. But let's meet and have a cup of coffee before. So, because I do want to catch up with my friend, and I will catch up with my friend. So if I don't have a few minutes just to talk before we walk into the networking, I probably will spend the whole time just talking to my friend. So try and get that out of the way a little bit, and then even come up with a strategy with your wingman. So if your wingman's extroverted and you're introverted, say, hey, can you introduce me to people, because you know I don't like walking up to strangers. Or, hey, you know so-and-so and I really want to meet them. Can you help introduce me to that person? So use your wingman, come up with strategies with your wingman. Don't just stand there and talk to your wingman the whole time, because that's not going to get you what you want.
You know, there are advantages and disadvantages to everything, and pep talk is one of them. You may have been here before, but I have psyched myself up so much for something that I've psyched myself right out of it. And when planning to go to an event, I'm pumped up for it, I'm talking to myself about it all afternoon, and then the time rolls around, I'm like, yeah, I need to leave now, and I don't leave the office yet, oh, I have to do this, I have to do that, and then I just drive right past the venue, because I'm like, oh, it's too late, it's already started, bummer. You can psych yourself out of those things really well, right? I have done that, personally. My wife, Stephanie, we'll probably tell her this, and she'll probably want to kill me, but whatever. She is far more introverted than I am, and that is exactly what she has done over the years with networking events. She just didn't psych herself out of it enough the night that she met me. But, so now she's stuck. But, pep talk, you want to psych yourself up, but it's all about the timing. It's about making sure that you do it to such a degree that you don't overthink it, especially if you're introverted.
Yes. Setting goals are great, but if you, and a lot of you are goal-oriented people when you raise your hand, so here's the problem with that, is it becomes about the goal and not about the networking. So especially if you say, okay, my goal is to meet 3 new people, it is very easy to be like, hey, good to meet you, hey, good to meet you, I'm out, right? And that really, you defeated the purpose of doing it. So goals can be restrictive, and they can let you just check a box and move on, whereas you need to think about the bigger picture, your bigger intention, not just I need to meet 3 people. I need to make 3 connections that I think are meaningful and worthwhile. So I may have to meet 12 people to make 3 connections. So don't let it restrict you.
You know, peer group, the one danger about a peer group that I've always seen is it can truly be that echo chamber, right? We talk about the current environment we're in as far as, you know, political narratives that happen across the country, right? Where people are they're just spewing a whole bunch of hate themselves to people who think just like themselves, all over the place. Well, if you do that and you don't give yourself any diverse group of people and thought, then how are you going to grow outside of what you're doing? So you need peer groups to help, but you also need to grow outside of it. So like me in banking, I'm not just gonna go to a bunch of events to meet other bankers all the time, because we're all technically in competition in many cases, right? So I may also need to look at going to trade shows for other organizations, going to different places. That is going to put me out there and force me to learn other industries as well. So peer groups are wonderful, but you don't just want to get caught in a situation where you're just going to an echo chamber and you're not growing yourself, professionally as well.
And Shane gave me food and drink because this is totally me. I am the person who cannot have a glass of wine and a plate and eat at the same time. Like I find myself all the time like, okay, now what am I gonna do? You just it is messy and awkward. So I do tend to kind of shy away from using it that much in networking situations because it just feels difficult and it can lead to trouble. So, if you feel nervous talking to new people, this is the other recommendation that I make all the time to my students. And this is a great one for the introverts because you're usually good at this already. The best way to overcome your nervous feelings is to stop making it all about you. Stop thinking about yourself, because that's where the nervousness is coming from. Oh, I seem so awkward. Oh, I don't know what to say. Oh, I don't, and you're just in your head about yourself. But when you step out of that, and it becomes all about that other person, and I just met this person named Matt, and I'm gonna ask Matt what he does, and how does he like it? How do you end up there? Just ask, it's all about him. I'm not really thinking about, I wonder if I'm awkward. I wonder if Matt thinks I'm weird. I'm just really focused on learning more about Matt. And that is the secret to great conversations, great connections, and not feeling so awkward and weird. I do make this joke all the time because it is actually true. So my husband is in a sales outward-facing type position. So he goes and meets people all the time. And it is not unusual for him to come home and say like, oh, I met so-and-so that knows you. They said they had this great conversation with you. And I will always be like, I didn't say anything. That great conversation was me doing exactly that kind of thing. So asking them about them. They told me a lot of stuff. And I enjoyed it, but it was like we had this great conversation. People think I'm a great conversationalist because I ask a lot of questions.
So if you're asking lots of questions, there's some examples, right? You want to try and keep it as open-ended as possible because that helps to eliminate some of that awkwardness. So what do? What's your favorite thing about your company? How did you end up in that role? All things that Dr. Crombie just gave examples of. And then what advice or wisdom do you wish you would have known when you were starting your career? These are all things that when asked, it helps to just open up a conversation and let it flow naturally versus that really awkward small talk that makes us all just kind of want to crawl up, right? So it's an incredibly important thing to do to practice so that you get really, really comfortable with open-ended questions. I find that that's probably when it comes to any conversation, the more, I guess, beneficial conversations I have are because of strong questions.
And the asking for advice about things, people love to give advice. People love to feel like their expertise and knowledge and experience is useful. So that's a great one. Anytime you get a chance to ask them, oh, well, what do you think about this? How would you do it if it were you? So, what we would like you guys to do really quickly is turn to someone at your table and try one of the techniques. Try, you got the food in front of you, so start a quick conversation about food. If you came with your wingman, have your wingman introduce, or you introduce your wingman. If you have a goal, think of it right now. I want to talk to everybody at my table. So just try one thing really quickly amongst yourselves, and then we're gonna go.
So which one of you is the bigger introvert of the wingman people thing? So add the two of you together and you have one bigger.
That's what I said, it's really on a continuum. I think,
Situation.
it's probably not situational as much as it is like, it just depends on how extreme you are. If you're really on an extreme end, then if you're always that way. If you're in the middle, you can kind of psych yourself up to go either way. And if you were a person, and I'm one of those who, when I say I'm an introvert, people are like, no, you're not. That means you're probably in the middle. You know that you are, but you can present yourself as more extroverted than you actually are inside.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
So, what I meant by situational, if I'm in a room with a bunch of Congress people, I'm gonna probably be introvert. If I'm in a
Okay.
room with a bunch of trillionaires, I'm gonna be introvert. But if I'm in a room with a bunch of regular people, I'm definitely be an extrovert. So situational means if I'm.
insulted that you've been
Well,
loud.
it's like I don't make the charity events and to people running for office and stuff, and sometimes I've caught myself in situations where I became an introvert, you know, and so, and knowing that sometimes it is situational, even though I prefer to be extrovert, it's easy to be introvert. Who doesn't wanna sit there and be in a room and be like quiet and like watching everybody, that's easy. But an extrovert is actually going around mingling. So there's advantages and disadvantages to both, so you have to choose whether or not you wanna be extrovert or introvert, and that's where that goal setting is.
Right. And I think the reason I am splitting hairs
Yeah, I'm just
is
kidding.
behavior versus temperament. Temperament is you're kind of born with, you are who you are.
Yeah.
Behavior you can choose.
Oh, yes.
And that's what you're saying. Temperamentally, you're an extrovert, but you can choose to
Definitely.
behave like an introvert when you want to and when it makes sense. And I think that's true for most of us. It's harder, the more extreme you are, the harder it is to do.
Yeah.
I was just gonna expand on that example. Sometimes it's just practice. It's just taking that time to sharpen those skills, right? It's just like if you played sports growing up, you probably weren't a starter day one, the first day you picked up a basketball or a football or anything, right? It took time to learn those skills and to move forward on it. And if you were to look at that poll that we had up at the beginning where people were kind of identifying in this room what they identify as, from the polar extremes of extreme introvert to extrovert, and a lot of people were in the middle. Those people in the middle have probably started on one side or the other, and then they've practiced and they've gained experience over the years. I was very shy and very quiet as a kid. I was around a lot of very boisterous people at my school, and I just didn't like to stand out or put myself out there at all. And what it took was, with my little garage band, my drummer's drum set absolutely collapsing on stage while we were performing in a battle of bands, like within like the third bar of the song. And there's nothing more mortifying than being in front of your entire high school student body and just like freezing. Nothing more mortifying than that. And that's what it took for me to realize my world didn't end, and then start getting a little bit more used to being out there. But it was practice that got me to the middle ground, right? So sometimes that's what it is. It's that you have your temperament that you're born with, just like Dr. Crombie said, but then your behavior that you can choose as you practice and you learn it, you learn that skill, and so you can apply it.
Matt.
I was gonna say, I think the thing that like I run into a lot, I'm like in this situation where like you're kind of one-on-one, is you go to a business networking event or a chamber event and it's just a bunch of people who are in their own kind of like cliques.
Yes.
How do you walk into that as an introvert and not just be like, hey, so can I join your party? You know, like what kind of tips would you give there?
You know, I have been in situations where somebody has walked up to a group and said, hey, can I join your party? And people are surprisingly like, oh, absolutely, absolutely. Sometimes people don't realize that they're just kind of standing around, and it's often, like I was at a convention, so none of us were necessarily tight friends. It's just that we had all kind of ended up standing around talking about something, and then this person walks up. So actually saying, hey, can I join you guys? It would be very rare for people to say no, in all honesty. In fact, I think everybody in this room would agree, if somebody walked up right now to your table and said, hey, can I sit down with you? Nobody in this room would be like, no, you cannot, get out. No, people, so that's actually okay. Another one, that is where that, the wingman is actually super helpful, and if you're the introvert and you have the extroverted wingman can help with that, because you can just kind of follow them. They'll talk, and then you kind of, but you have a plan with your wingman, because your wingman might just forget you're there and take the star of the show, and you're like, don't forget, introduce me, let me be part of this too. Yes?
So I've got one question. So how many of y'all go to a meeting and become your business and not just be you? Because when I go to meetings, I'm my business, I'm not me. When I go to a networking event, I'm going as my business, what I'm trying to represent, bring to the table, my brand. I'm not going as Charlie. And so if you're going as your business is there to talk to people, so you shouldn't be thinking about your personal feelings, you should be thinking about the image you build, your business, and just step into it. And that's kind of why it's easy for me to talk to anyone. It's because I'm being my business when you're communicating with me. I'm not necessarily being my individual self. Because in business, we're here to make money, that's what pays your bills. Your personal life is outside of that. So if you take that out and you learn to mingle between the two, that's where success is.
Well,
I could be wrong, but.
Well, and I would refer back to, I think one of the overstimulation slides that we had earlier, right, is that in many instances, I get what you're saying, I'm a business banker, I'm a commercial lender, and it is the easiest job in the world to ask a business owner what they do. They're gonna tell you everything about it. I was sitting in a room yesterday with a huge business regionally that I just had a very wide stroke of luck to get in the room with, and I just said, tell me about yourself. And I learned more about that business than I ever cared to know, but I just didn't realize all the things they did. It's very easy to get stuck in that. But when we're talking about those meaningful, deep connections, where do you draw that line between I'm here to represent my business and I'm here to sell you something?
Repeat.
Because,
Right.
where do you draw that line, right? Because where you have that is you're trying to forge genuine connections, especially with people who might identify as more introverted. If they feel like you're more trying to just sell them something versus form that relationship and that connection, that can be that kind of borderline, right, on whether or not you close the sale or don't. And that's all I would say when you think about that and that mentality. I mean, look, I'm a businessman, I'm
Yeah.
always looking for connections and businesses and people to work with, but I also have to bring my true self to it and let people know who I am, what my hobbies are, what my interests are, that I like personally, because that's what forms that
So you
relationship.
do that on day one though?
Absolutely,
That's hard for me.
absolutely.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and I would say, I would build on what Shane is saying, that, especially the strong extroverts in the room, that if you're kind of showing up as your business, and I'm gonna tell you everything about my business, it can be overwhelming for the recipient.
Definitely.
So there does have to be some give and take, some asking about that person, because, again, let's go back to my text. She's a lot. That, I don't know that if that were a business setting and this, that, I don't know that I would reach out to that person for business, just because I felt like that energy was a lot. Whereas if a more genuine, like Shane was just saying, a more genuine connection was made, then I might be more like, oh, I met this guy, I really liked him, we had a lot in common, and he also does this thing that I need. And I need my car detailed anyway, I'm gonna call him in, because he has a car detailing business, or whatever it is, you know? Whatever, everybody's selling something, everybody is selling something.
Well, and I wanted to expand on one thing that Matt mentioned earlier, like how do you go up, right, when it seems like people are just talking to each other and invite yourself in, but on the flip side of that, how do you, when you're interacting with somebody,
Yes.
create that spatial awareness to where you are inviting someone in? And part of that is body language, right? It's when you're talking to someone, if Dr. Crombie and I are just lasered in talking to each other, and I don't have an open stance, it's kind of looking out at the room and inviting people in, that can be very, very, standoffish to people, because we're focusing on each other and we're not paying attention to the rest of the room. So when you're talking with someone, kind of leaving that open stance so that you can do that is critically important. I was at a function Sunday night out in Hammond at Southeastern, big fundraiser, and I just can't forget it. There were these two gentlemen who I know extremely well, who were walking around and they were trying all the different foods and everything, and they stopped and just started having a conversation right in front of the food that I really wanted. And I was like, come on, but they didn't have any awareness whatsoever that they were blocking, not just from me, right? I didn't have a problem. I know these guys, and I'm just kind of like, parked, I'm going there, right? But, I mean, anyone else walking up is just gonna be turned away from that restaurant, turned away from potential conversation. And for them, they were there for business purposes, right? Turning away potential clients. So it's just one of those important things to think about when you're interacting with people, that awareness of what's happening around you is critically important.
It really is, and being the includer can make a huge difference in how you are perceived, the amount of connections you make, and as a nice person, it makes a big difference for that person who you just included. So just having that awareness of, there's a person standing there all by themselves. I'm going to introduce myself. I'm gonna walk over and say hi. I'm going to, it is such a gift of kindness to do to that person, to just notice and go, hey, I noticed you're standing here, come over here. We want to get to know you, whatever. Or just walk up to them themselves, hey, I'm Tonya Crombie, nice to meet you. It's very easy to do and it makes a huge difference. My story, when I moved here, my husband and I moved here, my kids are in middle school. There was some middle school event for parents. We don't know a soul, we're brand new. We're like, okay, we should go. It's one of those, we should go. This is the right thing to do. Neither one of us wants to go to this thing, but we'll go. So we go, we sit at a table by ourselves, and I kid you not, we're like, okay, well, we're going, we're gonna meet people, it's the right thing to do. People would come up to the table like, hey, is this seat taken? And we're like little eager puppies. No, it isn't. They're like, oh, great, thank you. And like literally left us sitting at it, like 5 people did that, and they just left us sitting at a table by ourselves. And I was like, this is the worst place I've ever been in my life. So don't make people feel that way. Remember that story. So final ideas on things to do. If you have to go to an event when you know, and you know who you are, y'all are laughing because you know who you are. Sometimes you know who's going to be there. You know ahead of time. Sometimes there's a participant list. sometimes it's a speaker, whatever. You can social media stalk them and find out things about them. You can connect with them on LinkedIn before you show up. You have something built in to talk about when you get there. You can say, hey, I saw that you just got a promotion, congratulations. Things like that that make people feel really good. They're like, oh, you know something about me, that's really cool. Have your questions and go to the topics before. Use your listening skills. If you are introverted, take breaks. Go to the bathroom, nobody will notice. Don't make it about you. And absolutely, absolutely, for every one of you, even those of you sitting at tables right now, if you've met someone, make connections. That's what social media is for. That's what LinkedIn is for. Go send LinkedIn requests to each other, and you are now building your network. That's how it all works. So which tips do you think you guys might use going forward?
The goal setting.
Awesome.
Can't tell you how big that follow-up one is. I probably landed some of my biggest clients just by following up and doing what I promised I would do. It's really pretty amazing what can happen with that. And it can be as simple as dropping them an email, sending them a message on LinkedIn, or I've even written just handwritten little notes and cards, like thank you for the conversation, it was great to meet you. But I have really poor handwriting, so I try not to do that. But when I do, the response is amazing.
Yeah, and sometimes, again, so if you're good at asking questions and learning about people will talk about something. They'll be like, yeah, so I'm going through this thing right now at our company. We're implementing this new thing. And then the following week, you're just doing what you do and you run across an article about that. That's such a great way to just say, hey, it was great meeting you. I just ran across this article about what we were talking about. Thought it might be interesting. And they will then remember you. They will remember you as that nice, helpful person. You had a great conversation, and you sent them this little article. And don't make it your goals and your networking so focused about, I'm here to get business. I'm here to get a sale. I'm here to do this. Because you don't know where these relationships will go. As Shane said, he's gotten jobs out of it that he wasn't looking for. But if you're genuine and you're connecting with people and you're offering things of value to people, just see where that goes. Don't be so focused on the next sale, because I think sometimes that comes across as really self-serving. Social media reconnaissance, see, I told you, I knew there was somebody in here. We all have that friend. I have that friend who I'll be like, yeah, I don't know, I'm not sure where they work, and she's like, hold on.
That'd be my wife. So, oh, I met this person. Did you know they were arrested 3 years ago? She can find anything. It's unbelievable.
Yep. So we would love to connect with you on LinkedIn as well. This is to get you started with your networking goals of using social media.
And if we can ever be of any assistance, if you ever have a question regarding it, or you happen to see that one of us is interested in an event online and we're going to it or anything, just reach out, say, hey, I'm going to be at that too. I hope to drop you a line. Just do it. Right? It makes it so much easier in that event when you have the ability to at least know someone who's going to something.
Yes, and speaking of events where you will know someone, if any of you, Southeastern, the College of Business is hosting a business forum in just a few weeks in April. It's all over social media. If you've connected with me, you can see it on my LinkedIn right now. And if you go, I will be there, and you can say hi to me. You will not walk in and not know a soul. I will be there, but it's going to be a great event for you and your company to attend. I highly recommend it.
I will be there as well, and it's at the Castine Center.
Right.
Too. So very, very close.
When is it?
April 25th. I only know that because that was my last week before vacation. So.
Thank God for Shane, I work there and I'm like, oh, I don't know, it's like a few weeks
Oh,
from
I
now.
blocked it out as soon as it was announced.
Yeah.
And there's a bourbon tasting the night before. So
Yeah,
maybe I will
VIP
have-
bourbon tasting the night before.
How do you find out to go or is there?
Like, did you just connect with me on LinkedIn? Cause my last post is about it and there's a link in my last post to go and purchase an individual ticket or you can get a whole table. For those of you who are in like sales roles where you entertain people, this is one of those things where you buy the table and you invite the people and do that sort of thing.
But thank you all for attending. We hope you got some valuable tips and tricks to use. And if we can be of any other service, you just let us know.